Snow fell over Kestrel outpost. Lira knelt in chains, surrounded by enemy warriors, exhausted but unafraid. Hours earlier, her own clan leader, the man who raised her, handed her over to Clan Dravok as a peace offering to end the war. A human sacrifice. She thought her life was over. Then the ground shook. Warriors parted in fear. The Alpha King, Dravok, stepped forward, the man she'd been warned to fear more than death. He knelt in front of her, not to strike her, to look at her. His hand rose, trembling, and touched the mark on her neck. It glowed. He whispered, "You're supposed to be dead. I've been searching for you for 6 years." Snow fell over Kestrel outpost like ash from a dying sky. Lira knelt on the frozen ground, wrists bound in cold iron, surrounded by warriors who had every reason to hate her. She should have been afraid. Somewhere deep inside her chest, though, past the fear, past the cold, there was something stranger, a feeling she couldn't name. A pull, as if her heart already knew something her mind had forgotten. She didn't know yet that this single night would break apart everything she believed about her life. She didn't know that the monster she had been warned about since childhood was about to become the only person who ever truly saw her. 6 hours earlier, she had still believed she was safe. Lira had spent her whole life inside Clan Ashveil, raised by its leader, Dravok, a man she called father even though he never once said the word back to her. She was the outsider everyone tolerated but no one loved, the healer who patched up soldiers who wouldn't look her in the eye, the scout who walked the border alone because no one wanted to walk beside her. She told herself it didn't matter. She told herself loyalty was enough, even when it was never returned. That belief shattered the moment Dravok called her into his chamber and told her, in a voice colder than the wind outside, that she was going to end the war. Not through strength, not through victory, through surrender. She was the peace offering. She remembered the walk to Kestrel outpost more clearly than she wanted to, the silence of the guards escorting her, the way none of them met her eyes, as if she was already a ghost to them. She remembered thinking, almost calmly, so this is what my life was worth. And then she saw him. Dravok did not walk like a man. He moved like something the earth itself made room for. Warriors twice his size stepped back without being told. The wind seemed to quiet around him. Lira had been told her whole life that the Alpha King of Dravok was a monster wrapped in a man's skin, a killer who would break her without a second thought. But when his eyes found hers across the frozen courtyard, nothing about him looked like a monster. He looked like a man who had just seen a ghost he'd been grieving for years. He crossed the distance between them slowly, as if rushing might make her disappear. His warriors murmured behind him, confused, uneasy. They had never seen their Alpha King hesitate before anything in his life. He knelt in front of her, in the snow, in front of everyone, something no Alpha King was supposed to do in front of a prisoner. His hand rose, trembling, actually trembling, toward the side of her neck, where a faint silver mark rested just beneath her skin. Every bonded colonist on Kestra's reach carried one. Lira had always assumed hers was decorative, meaningless. A birthmark, nothing more. The moment his fingers brushed against it, the mark answered him. It glowed, soft gold alive, like it had been waiting 6 years for exactly this touch. Lira gasped, pulling back instinctively, her chained hands rising to her throat. "What did you do to me?" "I didn't do anything," Kale whispered, and his voice cracked in a way that didn't match the terrifying reputation that had followed him across the frontier. "It did that on its own. It only does that for one person in the entire galaxy." Silence spread through the courtyard like frost creeping over glass. "You're supposed to be dead," he said, so quietly it felt like the words weren't meant for anyone but her. "I've been searching for you for 6 years." Lira stared at him, chained, frozen, her heart pounding so hard she was certain he could hear it. "I don't know you," she said. "I don't know what that mark means. I don't know what you're talking about." But even as she said it, something inside her wavered, because when his eyes met hers, it didn't feel like meeting a stranger. It felt like remembering. Kale ordered her chains removed with his own hands, ignoring the stunned silence of his warriors, ignoring every rule that said an enemy clan's offering should be treated as a prisoner, not as something precious. When the iron fell away from her wrists, he didn't step back. He wrapped his coat around her shoulders instead, his fingers lingering just a moment too long against her skin, as though touching her confirmed she was real. 6 years ago, he said, kneeling beside her by the fire they built in the courtyard, his voice low, meant only for her, I had someone the resonance bond chose for me before I ever became Alpha King. She wasn't from my clan. I hid her, protected her in secret, because I knew what my own people would do if they found out I loved someone from a rival bloodline. Lira's breath caught. Somewhere far beneath the surface of her mind, a flicker moved, warmth, firelight, a voice humming something without words. One night, Kale continued, staring into the flames instead of at her, because it was easier that way. Raiders burned the safe house to the ground. I was told she died in the fire. I searched the wreckage myself. I found nothing. No body. No trace. For 6 years, I told myself I imagined a future that was never going to happen. And now, Lira vi spirit. He finally looked at her, and there was nothing guarded left in his expression. Now the bond just told me the truth my eyes couldn't. You didn't die that night, Lira. Someone took you. Someone erased what you knew. And someone raised you to believe you were nobody's when you were always mine. The word landed on her like sunlight breaking through storm clouds she didn't know she'd been standing under her entire life. Mine. No one had ever called her that. Not once. Not in 19 years. Lira should have argued. She should have reminded him, and herself, that she had no memory of any fire, any safe house, any version of her life before Ashveil's borderlands. But her body was answering questions her mind hadn't caught up to yet. Her pulse quickened whenever he was close. Her skin remembered his hand before her mind could explain why. And when he reached out again, hesitant, silently asking permission this time, she found herself leaning into his palm instead of pulling away. I don't remember you, she admitted, her voice trembling. But I don't want you to let go either. Kale's jaw tightened, emotion breaking through the composed mask of an Alpha King in front of his entire court. Then I won't, he said. Not this time. Not ever again. Around them, Dravok's warriors exchanged uneasy glances. Some knelt, moved by the sight of their king, finally breaking after 6 years of quiet grief. Others watched with narrowed eyes, already suspicious that the enemy clan had sent something far more dangerous than a peace offering, a weapon disguised as a miracle. But Kale didn't care what anyone else believed anymore. For the first time in 6 years, he wasn't looking at an empty space where she used to be. He was looking at her. The fire crackled between them, and for one fragile moment, the war, the betrayal, the chains, the cold, none of it mattered. There was only her hand in his, and a bond neither of them had chosen, yet neither of them wanted to break. Then, from beyond the courtyard gates, a horn sounded, sharp, urgent, unmistakable. A messenger from Clan Ashveil arrived, breathless, demanding Lira's immediate return, or else Ashveil would treat her presence in Dravok territory as an act of war. Kale rose slowly to his feet, pulling Lira up beside him, his hand never once letting go of hers. Whatever Draven was hiding, he was terrified enough to risk a war over it. And Lira, standing beside a man whose touch felt more like home than 19 years with her own clan ever had, realized with a chill sharper than the frozen wind around them. The people who raised her weren't trying to save her. They were trying to silence her, before she remembered the truth for herself. Lira didn't sleep that night. She sat by the window of the chamber Kale had given her, his own chamber, though he hadn't told her that until one of the guards let it slip, watching the torches flicker along the walls of a clan she had been taught to fear her entire life. Yet nothing here felt like the nightmare Ashveil had warned her about. It felt, strangely, like the first place that had ever waited for her to arrive. She kept touching the mark on her neck, half expecting it to have faded, half hoping it hadn't. When morning came, so did the messenger's demand. Ashveil wanted her back, immediately, or they would call an act of war. Kale refused before the messenger even finished speaking. But refusing wasn't enough. If he wanted to protect her permanently, he needed proof, not just a glowing mark and a feeling in his chest that had haunted him for 6 years. So he agreed to something far more dangerous than sending her home. He agreed to bring Ashveil to her. The meeting was held in Dravok's great hall, tension thick enough to choke on. Lira stood beside Kale, not behind him, not hidden away, but beside him, his hand resting protectively near the small of her back the entire time, as if daring anyone in the room to suggest she didn't belong there. Dravok arrived flanked by guards, his expression carved from stone. When his eyes landed on Lira, something flickered behind them. Not relief at finding his missing ward safe, but something closer to alarm. "She is nothing," Dravok said flatly, before anyone else could speak. "An orphan we took in out of pity. Nothing more. I don't understand why the Alpha King is making a diplomatic incident out of a girl who means nothing to my clan." Lira felt the words land like a slap, even though she braced for them. 19 years, and that was still all she was to him. Nothing. But Kale's grip on her tightened gently, grounding her, and when he spoke, his voice was calm in a way that made the entire room go still. "Then you won't mind," he said, "if she stays here, if she means nothing to you." Dravok's jaw flexed. For one bare second, the mask slipped. Lira saw it. So did Kale. "She stays," Dravok said quickly, too quickly. "But she is Ashveil property, taken from Ashveil land, raised on Ashveil resources. If you intend to keep her, Alpha King, you will owe my clan a debt worth paying." Property. The word echoed inside Lira's chest long after the meeting ended, hollow and cold. She had spent her whole life being spoken about like something owned rather than someone loved. But for the first time, standing beside Kale, she didn't feel like property. She felt like something worth fighting for. That night, unable to sleep again, she wandered the halls until she found Kale standing alone on a balcony overlooking the frozen valley, moonlight catching the sharp lines of his face. He didn't turn when she approached. He simply reached out, without looking, and found her hand like he already knew she was there. "You heard him," she said quietly. "Property. That's all I ever was to him." "You're not property," Kale said, turning to face her fully now, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him despite the freezing air. "You're the reason I remembered how to feel something other than duty in 6 years. Property doesn't do that to a person." Lira's breath caught in her throat. The wind pulled at her hair, and Kale reached up, gently tucking a loose strand behind her ear, his fingers grazing her cheek in a way that made her heart forget how to beat properly. "I don't remember loving you," she whispered, almost afraid of the honesty in her own voice. "But I think some part of me never stopped." Kale's forehead dropped gently against hers, both of them breathing the same cold air, neither willing to be the one to pull away first. "Then let me remind you," he murmured, "however long it takes." It would have been so easy in that moment to let the ache in her chest completely consume her. The warmth of him, the way his hand fit against her jaw like it had done it 1,000 times before. But a distant memory tugged at her instead, sharp and sudden, cutting through the moment like ice water. A locked door. A room in her childhood home she was never, under any circumstances, allowed to enter. She pulled back slightly, eyes wide. "Kale, there's something I need to check. Something from before. A room Dravok never let me near." They left before dawn, slipping past Ashveil's borders under the cover of frost and shadow, Kale refusing to let her go alone despite the danger of an Alpha King trespassing on rival territory. Every step closer to her childhood home made Lira's pulse hammer harder, old fear and new hope tangled together until she could barely tell them apart. The locked door hadn't changed in 6 years. Old wood, old iron, exactly the way she remembered it in fragments too faint to trust, until Kale forced it open and the fragments became memory. Inside was a small room, untouched by time, filled with things that didn't belong to an orphan taken in out of pity. A child's drawing of 2 figures holding hands beneath 2 suns that didn't exist on Ashveil land, but did exist above Dravok territory. A torn strip of fabric, burned at the edges, matching the description of the safe house fire from 6 years ago. And beneath a loose floorboard, old medical records, hidden away, documenting injuries on a girl no older than 13. Injuries from an attack Draven always claimed happened during a routine border skirmish. The dates matched the fire. Lyra's hands trembled as she pieced it together, Kale standing silently behind her, letting her reach the truth herself rather than handing it to her. "He didn't find me after the fire," she whispered. "He caused it." Kale's expression darkened, but his hands on her shoulders stayed gentle, steady, an anchor against the storm breaking inside her. "He tried to kill you to stop the peace bond between our clans," he said quietly. "And when it failed, he kept you close instead, where he could control you, hide you, use you as leverage whenever it suited him. And when the war finally needed ending," Lira said, her voice breaking, "he decided I was more useful gone." Kale turned her gently to face him, his thumb brushing away a tear she hadn't realized had fallen. "He was wrong about you," he said. "About all of it. You were never something to throw away." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. There was only the quiet, the cold, and the undeniable pull between them growing stronger with every passing hour, a bond neither betrayal nor buried lies had managed to erase. But their fragile peace didn't last. Back within Dravok's walls that night, as Lira finally allowed herself to rest, exhausted from the truth she now carried, a shadow slipped silently past the palace guards. Draven knew what she had found. He knew Kale would expose him the moment the sun rose. And a man with nothing left to lose wasn't going to give her the chance to speak the truth out loud. The door to Lyra's chamber creaked open in the darkness, and she was fast asleep, completely unaware that the danger she survived as a child had just found her again. The shadow moved without sound, slipping past guards who had been quietly drugged hours earlier, past locks that shouldn't have opened, straight toward the chamber where Lyra slept. Finally, peacefully, for the first time in days. She never heard the blade being drawn, but Kale felt it. Somewhere deep in his chest, the resonance bond flared like a struck match, a warning that had nothing to do with sound or sight, just instinct, raw and violent, screaming that she was in danger. He was already moving before his mind caught up to his body, tearing through the halls of his own palace faster than he had ever moved in his life, because some part of him understood, with terrifying clarity, that losing her once had nearly destroyed him, and he would not survive losing her twice. He threw the door open just as the assassin's blade came down. What happened next lasted seconds, though it felt like an eternity carved into memory. Kale's body collided with the attacker before the strike could land, steel meeting steel in the darkness, the room exploding into chaos. Lira woke instantly, adrenaline burning away sleep, and rather than freezing in fear, she moved, grabbing the blade hidden beneath her pillow, a habit from a childhood she now understood was built on survival, not safety. She didn't wait to be saved. She fought beside him. 2 more shadows emerged from the darkness, sent to guarantee the job was finished, but they hadn't accounted for a girl raised by fear who had spent her entire life learning to survive it. Lira moved with a precision that startled even her. Years of quiet training under Ashveil's cruelty finally serving a purpose worth fighting for, protecting the man who had never once looked at her like she was disposable. When the last attacker fell, silence dropped over the room like a held breath finally released. Kale turned to her immediately, hands framing her face, checking for injuries with a desperation that had nothing to do with duty and everything to do with a fear too raw to hide anymore. "Are you hurt?" His voice cracked on the question. "I'm fine," she breathed, chest heaving, adrenaline still burning through her veins. "Kyle, I'm fine." But he didn't let go. His forehead dropped against hers again, just like the balcony, except this time there was no hesitation left between them, no distance, no uncertainty. Just relief, sharp and overwhelming, and something else neither of them was holding back anymore. "I told you I wouldn't let go again," he whispered, his voice rough. "I'm in it, even if it means burning down everything Draven built to protect it." Lyra's hands found the front of his shirt, gripping tightly, grounding herself in the fact that they were both still standing, both still breathing. "Then don't let go," she whispered back. "Not now. Not ever. And this time, when their lips finally met, there was no memory missing between them, no hesitation, no ghost of who she used to be, only who she was choosing to become, wrapped entirely in the certainty of a bond 6 years, and one betrayal couldn't break. By morning, the truth could no longer stay buried. Kel didn't call for war. He called for a public council. Every leader, every warrior, every voice from both Ashveil and Dravok gathered in the frozen courtyard where Lira had first knelt in chains only days before. This time, she didn't kneel. She stood at Kale's side, dressed not as a prisoner or a peace offering, but as exactly who she was, his bonded partner, and a survivor with nothing left to hide. Draven was dragged forward, stripped of the composed mask he always wore so easily, forced to stand before his own people as Kale laid out the truth piece by piece. The burned safe house, the falsified skirmish, the hidden medical records, the assassination attempt carried out on Dravok's soil the very night before. Whispers rippled through Ashveil's own warriors, disbelief curdling quickly into anger. These were people who had followed Draven for years, trusted him, defended his decisions, only to learn he had tried to murder a child to protect his own power, then spent 19 years controlling her, and finally, when she became inconvenient, tried to have her erased twice. She was never nothing, Kale said, his voice carrying across the silent courtyard, steady and unshaken. She was the daughter of a clan bond meant to end this war peacefully 6 years ago. Draven destroyed that peace out of fear, and he's been lying to everyone, including her, ever since. Draven opened his mouth to argue, to twist the truth one more time the way he always had, but Lira stepped forward before he could speak. "I believe that was nobody's for 19 years, she said, her voice trembling but clear, carrying easily across the frozen silence. "I believe I deserved the way you treated me. But I was never nothing. I was someone you were afraid of, because loving someone from the enemy clan, choosing peace instead of power, was never something you understood. Ashveil's warriors, hearing the truth laid bare in front of them, made their choice. One by one, they lowered their weapons, refusing to defend a leader who had built his power on lies and blood. Without his clan support, Draven had nothing left. No army, no authority, no way to hide anymore. He was exiled that same day, stripped of his title, sent beyond the borders with nothing but the truth finally following him wherever he went. There was no war, no galaxy-shaking battle, no army marching across the stars. Just one man's lies finally collapsing under the weight of the people he had deceived, and one clan, freed from a leader who had never deserved their loyalty, choosing honesty instead. That evening, as the frozen courtyard emptied and the last of the tension finally lifted from Kestrel Outpost, Kale found Lira exactly where he somehow always seemed to find her, standing quietly, watching the twin suns dip below the horizon, the same suns from the child's drawing hidden in that locked room years ago. "You did that," he said softly, coming to stand beside her. "Not me. You stood in front of everyone and told the truth, even when it would have been easier to stay silent." "I had someone standing beside me," she said, glancing at him with a small, tired smile. "That made it easier than I expected." Kale reached into his coat and withdrew something small, an old resonance emblem, passed down through generations of bonded partners, reserved only for those the bond confirmed beyond any doubt. He didn't kneel, didn't make a grand speech in front of a crowd. He simply took her hand, quietly, privately, the way their entire story had unfolded from the very beginning, not through spectacle, but through small, undeniable truths. "I'm not asking you to be my prisoner," he said, "or my peace offering, or anyone's property ever again. I'm asking you to be exactly what the bond already knew you were before either of us understood it. My equal, my partner, my destiny. Not because fate decided it for us, but because I choose you every single day for exactly who you are." Lyra's eyes filled with tears she didn't try to hide anymore. 19 years of believing she was worth nothing had ended not with a war, not with revenge, but with a quiet promise beneath two setting suns. "Then I choose you too," she whispered. "Every day, for exactly who you are. The emblem settled against her skin beside the resonance mark, glowing softly in the fading light. No longer a mystery, no longer a wound from a stolen past, but a promise finally allowed to exist in the open. They had betrayed her to the enemy pack, believing she was worth nothing more than the peace her absence might buy. Instead, they gave her back to the one person who had spent 6 years refusing to let her go, and in doing so, gave her something far more powerful than the family that discarded her. They gave her a home she never had to fight to belong in. And for Lira, who had spent her entire life being told she was nobody's, that was the only ending that had ever truly mattered.